So the story everyone is talking about today is these young Republican chat messages that got leaked, hundreds of pages of them leaked to Politico, in which they express, these young Republicans, mostly male young Republicans, express a series of noxious and incredibly intolerant thoughts about Black people, about Democrats, about their fellow Republicans. Let me just read the lead from Politico. They referred to Black people as monkeys and the watermelon people and mused about putting their political opponents in gas chambers. They talked about raping their enemies and driving them to suicide and lauded Republicans who they believed support slavery. I have two thoughts on this that are related. The first, I think there is going to be a rush to insist that, see, all Republicans really think like that. They're all racists and they love Hitler. And I don't think that's fair. Because I think at some level what this is, and I'll get to why we shouldn't excuse this behavior in a minute, but I think at some level what this is a bunch of dumb college age, early 20s males mostly, trying to impress one another by kind of over the top, ridiculous statements. I don't think they actually love Adolf Hitler. I read the context in which that statement was made. Look, you should never, ever say that, period, even joking. But I don't also think this means that every Republican hates Black people and loves Hitler. And wants their political opponents to go to the gas chambers. I think it's dumbass kids, boys, talking and trying to impress one another and one-up one another on a text chain where that kind of behavior sort of cascaded, right? It's one says something that they shouldn't say, then the other one's like, oh, watch this kind of behavior. I didn't do anything like this when I was a teenager. That said, I talked in ways about women, about girls, about our friends that I would not be proud of now. This is not to excuse it, because I do think it belies a larger thing within the Republican Party and within male and masculinity and male culture more broadly, which I've observed with my own two boys who are 16 and 13. I think while it is important to say that, no, this is not revealing that every Republican secretly thinks these things, I do think the last decade, which obviously has been dominated politically and every other way by Donald Trump, the last decade has seen a return to what I would describe, at least in part, as toxic masculinity, which is this kind of tough guy, super overconfident, muscular, literally and figuratively. You're always tough. Nothing bothers you. UFC kind of mentality with the kind of people that have emerged in the Trump world. Donald Trump himself is obviously like this. This is the guy who has urged the police to be rougher with protesters. But Donald Trump Jr. is in some ways, I think, even more the obvious sort of person who channels that kind of maleness. He's hunting, he's fishing, he's talking tough, he's putting out ridiculous memes that are at least borderline offensive, but he doesn't care, right? Dana White. Like there's a whole culture that has grown up around Donald Trump that existed before Donald Trump, but that he has kind of been the flagship, carrying the standard of, that I do think is reflected in these texts or in these exchanges. I think they're on Telegram, so not actually texts. Because I think it is this sense with young men that, yeah, Andrew Tate might be a bad guy, but man, he's successful and he has awesome cars. No, Andrew Tate is a terrible person. We should not look up to the Andrew Tates of the world. Andrew Tate is not an example of how we should behave as men in the world or young men in the world. But the glorification of that sort of stuff, and again, this does not lay at Donald Trump's feet. It existed before Donald Trump. It will exist after him. But he has absolutely helped to amplify the idea of what it means to be a man in American culture. And I think these boys, or man, I don't know how you want to describe someone who's in their early 20s. I think they're a reflection of that reality. They think it's cool to say over the top, intolerant, racist, anti-Semitic things, right? That they've been taught that like, oh, freaking out the squares is how you're a real man. Well, no, I mean, intolerance is just intolerance, right? But I do think we have primed the male culture to, if not reward that, then think that's cool. You know, if I hear my kids say one more time, like so-and-so has aura, if you don't have a teenager, you may not know what that means. It just means basically that they're cool. And some of the people they think have aura are not people that I admire, and they are not people I want them to admire, which I make very clear. So again, I think there's a dumb boys acting stupidly, trying to one up one another, which has been around for a long time. And I think you got to be careful not to extrapolate this out to what every Republican secretly thinks. No, I don't think that's the case. And I think to take a set of text messages from 20-something men and extrapolate that to this is what all Republicans think is a mistake. At the same time, I do think we are now in a culture where men in particular think, and young men especially, think that behaving in ways like this is kind of proving how cool, how much aura, how tough you are. And I think that does a disservice to men, young men, and obviously does a disservice to the people with which they're aiming this rhetoric, even privately. So, like I said, I never think these things are as simple. It's easy to just say, see, Republicans are all racist and anti-Semites and they love Hitler. Yeah, I get that that's facile and easy. I don't think that's really what's going on here. I think this is a broader cultural problem about what we are teaching our boys and young men, what we expect out of them, what they think is to aspire to. And I think that's a broader problem that does have some Donald Trump tinges on there. But again, that to me, it's complicated. It's not as simple as Republicans racist bad, right? Okay, that's all I got for you. As always, I ask one thing. I just hope that you value this kind of independent, authentic analysis. I'm always trying to bring to you my honest opinions. I'm never trying to give you takes that I think are just going to get me more likes, more subscribers, more whatever. I'm not solving for that. I'm solving for honest, independent journalism. I am in this for the long haul. I'm not focused on short-term gain, some big subscriber kick or big money infusion. And that's why I'm always going to tell you how I think it is. I'm not always going to be right. I've been wrong plenty, but it will be honest wrong. It will be, I'll explain how I got to where I got, and I'm never going to do something because I think it's good for me politically or good for me from a business perspective. That's my pledge. I ask one thing: if you want to support that kind of independent journalism, support the kind of journalism you want to see in the world, hit that subscribe button. It's free. You get content like this every single day. Take care.